in the lesson 15, or something that seemed all the words related to something. And I looked at the lesson and I thought, well, this all kind of relates to disasters, you know? So I wanted to find something else to teach you some vocabulary words in relation to disasters without just relying on that reading passage in the book, okay? So we're just going to go a little bit off the book tonight, and I just have a few different activities planned, and if everybody has a worksheet, then we're fine. But the main objective of what we want to learn today is that, you like this little hand that I found up here?
Yes,
I can describe, that means talk about disasters, whether they're natural disasters, like a tornado, or a hurricane, or earthquake, or something like that. An incident, like a political incident, like some of those, like a revolt, a revolution. We had a video that we're going to show about something happening in Russia where they pulled down those statues of Lenin. That's an incident. And then a smaller disaster, something that's called a mishap, just a mistake. That'd be like tripping over the chair and falling on my face. That's a small disaster, you know, for this kind of context. So that would be more like a mishap. So, but first I wanted to go over the vocabulary words that we're going to be using in this lesson. And if you'll notice, some of these words, most are in black, but some of these are in red. See these words in red? Does anybody know why? Have any idea why some of those words might be in red?
Different.
Opposite.
These words, do they seem to do something? Kind of an action word, fracture, petrify, lurch, topple. Those are verbs. Okay?
Oh, yes.
Verbs. Those are action words.
Oh, yeah.
And at the end of the lesson, I'm going to give you kind of a little grammar lesson of what we can do with verbs, like tenses of verbs, kind of at the very end. Okay? So these are verbs. So we're going to go over some of these words. And let me see. We may need to turn off the light. Can you all see that, or would you like me to turn off one of the lights? Lights, okay. Okay. So the first word that we have is a disaster. Okay. Disaster. Did you all get the video?
Yeah.
Where I was saying the words? Okay. So it's disaster. And a disaster, that is just something that happens that's a catastrophe. Do you know that word catastrophe? Like that building falling down, something that just causes just a bad effect to happen. That is what we call a disaster. I was hoping I'd be able to reference my book while we do this. I think I can. Without, minor incident. Okay. Or something that causes like damage or harm is a disaster. Okay. And then our next word is to flee. Okay, and fleeing, and they're not, what are they doing? Are they running towards something or away from something? Right. See, like they're being chased, she's being chased by the birds, and he's being chased. So to flee, that usually means if you're trying to get away from something, that's to flee. Okay. Hello? Oh, wonderful. Hello, come on in. There's probably a good seat for you right there, next to Yanina. And I think you've got the worksheet. So we're just going over the vocabulary words right now. You should have, I should have told you this, there's a PowerPoint here. And you can go through these words. Do you have one of these? And as I'm going, if you want to make little notes here too and write the Spanish equivalent or whatever you'd like to do to help. But this PowerPoint also coincides with the PowerPoint on the screen. Okay? And the next word we have is fracture. Fracture. Is it fracture? Fracture. Okay? Right. And that means like a break, or just, that's a break in the earth actually. That's a fracture. That probably was a small hurricane, earthquake, and it caused the earth to crack, like a big crack. That's a fracture. And your bones, like somebody tripping and falling and fracturing their arm. You hear that a lot, fracture. Okay. The next word, yes, immense. Yes, immense. Immense.
Immense.
Right.
Sounds that only one M.
Right, immense. 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 It's not more of an immense, it's more of an immense. And the stress is on the second syllable. Immense. And that's something that is big or epic, you can say, like great in size, like that's the Grand Canyon. You can see it's just these immense rock formations there. Or, there's a little surfer right there to give you some perspective. And he's surfing this immense, giant wave. So, and I hope he makes it, but that's a big wave. So something great in scope, that's considered immense, okay? And then intense. Okay? Yes, intense. Right. That's something that's very strong or very great. Like intense, like that's an intense stare. That creepy guy. And that's intense emotion.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. That's from a movie called It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but he saw a ghost or something. He's showing some intense emotion. Okay. Next one, investigate. Investigate. Okay. Does somebody want to tell me what that cat is doing? Yes, investigating the box, trying to see what is inside the box.
Looking for trouble.
Yes, looking for trouble, most likely. Can you all see? I know this thing is in the way, but if you all need to move your chairs or anything, I know that this kind of projector's in the way.
It's okay.
You can see? Okay. Okay, and then that's an investigator, probably somebody that's investigating a crime, that's looking for clues. So that's investigate. Okay, and lurch, is this to move forward or maybe to the side very suddenly, like to lurch forward?
Lurch.
So it's lurch, just an sound, lurch. Yeah, lurch. You don't really say that ooh so much. It's not like an ooh, it's just an lurch. Like, yeah. And so she's lurching forward to catch the ball. And that penguin is lurching into the water. Major, this one has a lot of kind of different meanings, but in this context, with disasters, like a major incident, or something like a major earthquake, that's something big in scope, big earthquake, a major hurricane, just one of those, whatever, F4, F5 tornadoes, a major tornado, just something big in scope is major. Also, it can mean like a position in the army, or in the military, like a major, that's just in the colonel, major, private.
The government too.
And what?
Government.
Yes, yeah. Right. Or in college, you choose your major. That's your course of study. Like right now, I'm majoring in education. So, and you can also have a minor too, but we'll go over that. Minor, that means small. In this context, minor. Yes. Oh, we're not doing the pronunciation, sorry. Minor. So it's minor. And that means small. Sometimes children under 18 are considered minors. Or minor details, small details. Just that's the opposite of major is minor. Yes. Or in college, like in college I majored in music and I minored in education. So most of my studies were in music and I took a few in education when I was in undergrad. And then this one is petrify. Petrify. And that means one thing is to be just scared, so scared you can't move. Like if somebody's running toward me, but I just froze in my tracks, I can't move. That means I'm petrified. Okay?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or right. Or this wood. This was a piece of wood, and the wood over time, I don't know if it got some water, or waves were hitting it, it turned to stone. So it's not malleable anymore. The wood is petrified. So you can see.
For all?
Yeah. Wood can petrify into stone. Yeah. So you'll hear that context sometimes. Okay? And this one is predict. It's more about predict, because you're heading toward the second syllable, so you don't put a lot of stress on the vowel on the first one. So it's predict, predict, predict. Okay, so this person's predicting the weather. That's when you say what's going to happen next. Like the weather forecasters didn't really predict that snowstorm all that well last week, I didn't think. So, or you can predict the future as a fortune teller. I don't know if you can see, can anybody see what's going on in the picture in the corner?
Oh, yeah, for the spring. This is about the season.
Okay, see, that's
Yeah.
those are some people who get a groundhog.
The weather.
Groundhog.
Yeah.
Yes, so that we had a February 2nd Groundhog Day. And what they do is, that's a groundhog in, I think, some town in Pennsylvania. And that groundhog, they have a big ceremony, and they get him out, and if he sees his shadow,
Yes.
that means he predicts that they're going to have winter for 6 more weeks. It's a legend, but it's just something fun. Yeah.
It's only in Pennsylvania.
Well, they have a big ceremony for it in Pennsylvania.
Only there.
Well, that's the biggest. They may have little ones elsewhere, but they're known as Groundhog Day. If the groundhog sees his shadow, he predicts that it's 6 more weeks of winter. And I think he saw it this year. So, okay, and the prone, that's a prone position. You don't really hear that much in casual conversation. But that means lying face down is prone. So, yeah, face down is prone. If you're this way, you're not prone. It's lying on your stomach. Okay? Prone. 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 And then you can also use it in this kind of terminology, accident prone. That means likely, something likely to happen. We're going to see a video about some woman who's very accident prone. She just tends to have a lot of accidents happen to her. And you also hear, well, you hear this a lot, if somebody has acne prone skin, you hear that a lot. Somebody who has maybe very oily skin or tends to break out, that's considered acne prone. I hear that all the time in advertisements and commercials. So, but it's something that you're just always have happen to you. The conditions are right for things to happen to you. That's considered prone. It's kind of a difficult concept, but you'll mostly hear it like an accident prone person. Okay. And then sparse. Sparse, yes. Sparse. Sparse. Right. That just means it's not crowded or thinly grown, like you can see here at the stadium. It had a very sparse crowd. Must have been the losing season for this team or something, because the stands aren't full. They're sparsely populated. Okay. And also, like here, this forest doesn't seem to have a lot of trees, so it's kind of a sparse forest. Sparse. Yeah. Not thick. And the opposite of thick. Right. Okay. And then to topple.
Oh my God.
I know, isn't that sad? That's a wedding cake. These poor people, their wedding cake toppled over. That's usually something like a vertical structure that falls over. That's to topple. And they're pulling the statue down. The statue toppled. They're toppling it. So, yeah. So it's topple. Oh, we didn't say that. So topple. Topple. Right. Okay. Did you get the meaning? It's a fall over. Okay. And then urban. Remember last week we had an opposite word, last lesson. Wilderness. That means something that's not populated. An urban area is like a city, an inner city, a densely populated city. Just an urban area, just something like that. So urban. Urban. So I'm going to go through the pronunciations one more time. I don't know if you can all see this. The first one. Our first word, let's see, Sebastian. Disaster. Right. Okay. And then we'll go around this way. Clara, what's this word? Flee. That's right, flee. Fracture. That's right. Okay, we'll kind of go around the circle. Marta? Immense. Right, immense. And Marita? Intense. Right, intense. Okay, Janina?
Investigate.
Right, investigate. Okay, and Marta, Elena? Lurch, that's right. Okay, Juan? Major, that's right. And
Maria.
I'm sorry, Maria. I'm sorry.
Minor.
Minor. Oh, back to you, Sebastian.
Petrify.
Right, petrify. That's good. Clara?
Pretty.
And predict.
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 Predict. Uh-huh.
Prone.
Prone. What's it?
Sparse.
Sparse. Sparse.
Topple.
Tuple. And back to you, Nina. Urban. Right. Okay. So that's how that's all pronounced, and that's just what this lesson was about. So I wanted you to learn the vocabulary so we can actually kind of talk about it some. But one of the things that I wanted to do to talk about in this particular lesson that I have to do a content. Okay, so a subject matter, and teach the vocabulary around it, and the words around it. So we're going to talk a little bit about disasters. And I don't know, I sent an email out kind of before the weather happened and asked if anybody had any to talk about maybe some kind of disaster incident that they've read about or even experienced. So I'm going to tell you about one that I've read about, and I would love to have a volunteer to talk to me about a disaster that they've either read about or been through. But I thought this was a really interesting one. There was something in 1919, the turn of the century, called the Great Molasses Disaster. And let me get my PowerPoint up for that. There we go. Okay, get the lights again. So something like this. I looked it up. I don't know if I have the right word. Molasses. Molasses.
In Spanish is melaza, but in English is
Molasses. 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 Molasses.
Very sweet.
Very, very sweet. Kind of bittersweet. Yeah, very sweet. But do you think like something like this? Do you think this could cause a major incident or a minor?
Minor.
Most it'd be minor if like I got it in my hair right before class or something. You know.
It's
Yeah.
alarm.
Yeah, that could be just a minor incident. But believe it or not, there was a big major incident, with molasses in Boston in 1919. And this is what Boston looked like in 1919. There was a section of Boston called the North End. And right now, that's a really posh section that has a lot of fancy Italian restaurants and everything. But back then, it was a very poor area. And this is right after World War I, they decided to use molasses like this. They found that molasses was a good ingredient for making bombs.
Yes.
Yes, for making bombs. You knew that. I did not know that. Yeah.
Case too, case.
Yeah, for making bombs. So what they did was they constructed this big, immense, that's the biggest tank ever to have been constructed, pointer, in the United States, and that entire tank was filled with molasses. Okay, and I think it held like millions of gallons of molasses. But back then they didn't have a lot of regulations and everything, so they constructed it really fast, and no one investigated it or inspected it to make sure that it was solid. And there was a very unseasonably warm day, a very warm day in January, and suddenly molasses, first it started leaking along the sides, and like little kids would come up with spoons, you know, to get the molasses. They didn't realize how big of a deal it was, but then suddenly it started getting really, really hot in there, and they heard the sounds that they thought were machine guns, and people were jumping from cover, but it was actually the screws of the rivets all just popped from this tank, okay? And then suddenly a huge, just immense wave of molasses. Yes, just like a big tidal wave.
The molasses coming from the tree or
Um,
made for?
I know syrup comes from a tree. I think it actually comes from sugarcane.
Sugarcane.
Yeah, it comes from sugarcane.
In Colombia, we use it for that one mix it with water for give to the horse.
Oh,
okay.
Energy.
And you were too.
Okay, yeah.
For energy. It's for energy.
Energy.
It's very good.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. See, this is a learning you can see, I'm going to make the next slide.
They look like a
Yeah.
grease.
Yeah, yeah. It's awful. And this is part of the tank that collapsed. Yeah, that was that big tank. And then this is some of the cleanup afterwards. You can see all that in the street. That's molasses. Okay? But nobody could really predict that was going to happen. Okay? And then you can see this is the explosion. It actually was pretty bad. It injured 50 people and 11 people were killed from the molasses, because the molasses caused a big wave and people were trying to flee from it. They couldn't
But
quite.
a long time ago.
This is 1919. Yes, a long time ago. Yes, they had to clean it. It took weeks to clean it. They had to use salt water to get it up. So would you consider this, I guess, what kind of disaster? A major disaster.
Oh, yeah,
Disgusting.
Right, or a catastrophe. Yeah. So, yes.
Sweet.
Sweet.
Extra
A sweet catastrophe. Yes. So, that's kind of what we're just kind of going to be talking about, those kind of disasters. So, can anybody tell me about a disaster? Marta, yes.
I live in Orlando, Florida. In 2005, a hurricane passed through my house.
Oh,
A hurricane? Which one? Do you remember the name?
Ivan, Charlie, and I forgot another.
Oh, several.
4 hurricanes.
4 hurricanes.
no.
And we need to close the windows, everything with the special wood. Everything inside was so dark.
Oh my goodness.
But in my neighborhood, everybody suffered accident. And when I open the door, you can find in the street a lot of things from the other people.
Oh.
They're coming from other people. It was
Right.
so terrible.
Very scary.
Unfortunately, in my house, nothing happened.
Oh, well, that's good. Oh my goodness, 4 hurricanes.
Unfortunately.
Wow. My
After
goodness.
that, we really
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Anybody else? Just one more. Anybody else have anything they'd like to tell me about? Oh,
In
Nina.
Colombia,
Oh, yeah.
in Colombia we have one city in Tolima department. The city is Armero, with the volcano is come over the city Armero. Maybe 11,000 people dead.
Oh my goodness. Oh wow.
The
Yes.
city disappeared.
Oh wow.
Yes, yes.
The city was disappeared.
The town is disappeared.
Oh my goodness. That's a major,
Oh, yes.
epic disaster. Yes. Oh my goodness. Yanina, did you have one?
Yes, I remember when I was in Germany in 2003. It was an overflow in several European countries like Germany, Czech Republic, and Austria, as the river Elbe.
Oh.
And these flood caused a major disaster because there were a lot of people died and were financial and personal loss. And but it was for me, I couldn't believe that because I thought that in Europe, in East Europe, would never happen such
Right.
kind of natural
Right.
disaster.
So it was a big flood.
Yes, a big flood, and yes, and
I wouldn't have thought of that in Europe either.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, and it was really very, very sad. But on the other side, a lot of German and European citizens came to the disasters places, and they helped a lot.
Oh, well, that's good.
And,
Yeah.
yes, and a lot of insurance companies, maybe they got bankrupt.
Right.
Because
Oh, yeah.
they pay a lot. And
Yes.
I was very surprised.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that either. Wow. Well, I learned about the Boston thing, and this is a really neat book called I Survived, True Stories, and there's some other disasters in here, like a blizzard in the 1800s, where some children actually survived this blizzard that came out of nowhere, tornadoes, floods, and also the Titanic. So this is, if anybody ever wants to look at this book or borrow it, it's a really, it's an interesting book. So, okay, next I wanted to look at some worksheets here. If everybody will look at, we're going to look at these packet of videos. Okay. And I'm going to play the first video. I want you to watch it. And then afterwards, you can work in groups of where you're sitting and finish the worksheet. We're going to do one at a time. Okay? So we're going to watch the first one. Let me just get set up for a moment here.
That's partly because of television broadcasts of this tornado. It was filmed by a Kansas television crew who got too close for comfort. An overpass offered the only shelter.
It sounded like a freight train. It just passed right on top of us. People very upset. People underneath the girders of this overpass. They're still hanging on.
But this was a baby twister. Stronger winds compressed under the bridge would have sucked anybody out. Winds in these narrow spaces have long worried tornado experts, such as Dr. Charles Doswell.
So, a very important thing to note is what those people did, they were lucky. You don't want to do that. That was actually just a small tornado.
But the big one, take the people from the.
It could.
Oh my
It
God.
could if it were bigger. Yeah,
Okay.
they were lucky. So what I want you to do is this one is video one. So on your first paper, video one, you can work in pairs, groups of 3, groups of 2 if you need to, and I just want you to complete the answers, and then we're going to go over them. I'm going to give you about a minute or two